What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. Of course, this is TWA Motorsports, and today we are on the Yukon. I said in the last video when we replaced the axle, guys, I was going to be doing the brakes, and that is what we are going to be doing in this video. So, no surprise that, guys, I am going with powerstop brakes. You can see them sitting beside the 55 here. And why? Well, because I've had really good luck with them. Just about everything in the shop. You can see them on the Trans Am stuff. You can see them on the green truck. They are on the 52. You name it, it's on there. We're going to be using them on the 55 as well. But guys, this is what we are doing today. We are working on the Yukon. So the brakes are completely shot, and like I said, I talked about that in the last video. It's kind of a maintenance thing, but we're gonna be doing some upgrades at the same time. So the very first thing I wanna do before we get into the product of what we're gonna be using, which I will be listing every single thing in the description down below, guys, we are going to be going taking this thing off the ground and getting the wheels and tires off, because I want to get everything disassembled, because I want to paint the brakes at the same time. So when I say brakes, I want to paint the calipers. So I've always hated the fact that GM never paints their calipers. They do on a lot of their higher end stuff, so like the Corvettes and stuff get the powder coated option, but for some reason the trucks just never have gotten that. So we're going to be painting them with some ceramic paint you guys have seen me use before. We're not going to do any weird colors. Since this thing's kind of a greenish gray color, I want to do a black probably. You can order from like G2 caliper paints. You can order a paint match, but for me, I'm just going to use black on this. So either way, let's get this thing off the ground. We're going to get the wheels and tires off. 7/8 is what you need to get the wheel off, and we're going to have to get a couple jack stands under this thing, but let's get it off the ground and start taking stuff apart. As you can see, I've got jack stands all the way around. I even left the jacks in on both sides, guys. So just make sure you get the frame supported nice. So now we can whip these wheels off and get started on tearing this stuff down. Now that we got all the wheels off, let's talk about what we're gonna need here. Like I said, we're gonna be disassembling first before we get into installing, obviously. But guys, I wanna paint this. And in order to paint this, I need to clean it. In order to clean it, I wanna take it apart. So it's, yeah. So anyway, you're gonna need a 19 millimeter. Normally, guys, you could just take off the whole caliper and kind of move it back, but we're gonna need a 19 millimeter to get this off, because I wanna separate this, so the caliper itself, the slides, and the bracket. So we need a 19 millimeter up here. Once we get that off, a lot of times the center section right here spins. A 19 fits there as well. So I've got a 19 wrench, I've got a 19 on my impact. And then back here, to get the actual the bracket itself off, that's an 18 millimeter, and you have one at the top and the bottom. So aside from that, you're gonna need a Torx to get this guy out on the front. And I believe it's a T30. I don't know if you guys noticed, but in that video when I replaced the hub, or this axle, the CV shaft on the other side, that had ran out a little bit. This one seems a little snug. Hopefully we don't strip it. That is a nightmare to get out if you do. But aside from that, that's pretty much all we need. I'm gonna set the brake up here, which you guys will see. I'm gonna take this apart on camera, but it may be a little easier for you to kick the wheel this way so you have a little more room to work. But once we do that, once we get this off, we'll get the caliper out of the way, and then we're gonna put it back together. I'm gonna take the brake pads out. I'm gonna take the all the bracketry out, so I have a nice area to paint and a stationary point to hold it. So I'm gonna be putting this all back on to clean and to hold it while I paint it. That way I'm not having to hold it in my hand. As I said, this seemed a little on the snug side. And they are very easy to strip. All right. You don't have to start there, that's just where I started. We will be reusing this, so keep it. And I'm gonna go to the, in the truck and see. Yeah, it's locked because it's electric power steering, like I said in the last video. So we'll unlock it and get this wheel turned to give us easier access. You can see how much easier access becomes if you turn that. I didn't turn it lock to the lock, but let's get the 19s out first. And I think I have a direct shot at those. I don't need the swivel on it. And then, like I said, guys, chances are that it's gonna spin. So you might as well have a 19 handy to to get these guys out. And I'm only going to show you just one side. I may go around it once I get them all painted and show you guys that. But so we got that on, or off. We should be able to move this caliper out. And man, these pads, guys. We're going to set this up here so we don't put any stress on the actual line, because I'm not replacing the lines. But look how bad these pads are. I know that they are. We'll see if the wear indicate. Oh my God. They've been squeaking for a while. The back one's worse. Oh yeah, that's what we're hearing. See, we're down to the wear indicator. Golly. So the wear indicator goes in the back. Remember that. They're different shapes, and they will only go in one way. So we'll have to remember that when we go back together. But yeah, guys, I know. The other thing though is, let's see, I may wait, and we may be able to get this out. Your new brake pads and the kit that I'm going to list in the description should come with all new hardware, but just in case it doesn't, we'll keep these over to the side. We may have to clean them up, but a majority of the time, they're pretty good about including hardware. So now, I don't know if my impact, we may have to use the breaker bar for this. This is an 18. I don't know if my impact will get this or not. They generally have Loctite on them. Okay, well, stronger than what I think. And there we go. So there's our bracket out of the way. And if there's new boots in here, these slides still feel good. I may take these back apart when we go back for assembly, but for right now, I'm gonna leave them in place and we're gonna paint around them. So now, once we got that apart, holy cow, that's crusty. Get this old nasty brake rotor off, and we are ready to put it back together. I know that sounds crazy, but like I said, I'm wanting to paint this, and the best way to paint it really is off the truck. But look, guys, this is a daily driver, and we don't have to have perfection, but we're gonna try to get all the areas that we can. So what I think I'll do is we will clean the bracket up, since I have access to see everything right here. So we'll put this back together, and then I'm gonna go grab some brake clean, a couple brushes, like a steel brush, and we're gonna brush this down and get this started cleaning, get this all cleaned up, and then we will move our attention to the caliper. We'll put it back on and do the same with it. Now, these little steel brushes work really good. And the cool thing about, you know, these brakes is they're pretty easy to clean. I mean, we keep this thing, even though it's really dirty right now, we generally keep it pretty clean. But I've got a piece of cardboard under it, just because it is gonna get messy. When you order like G2 caliper paint, it actually comes with brake clean. It only comes with one can though, and in my opinion, guys, you need to use probably a couple. So I'm going to scrub on this a little bit off camera, and then we'll get the actual caliper itself back on, and we'll work on doing the same to it. So you can see how much better that looks, you know, brushing it down. I may go over it with a Scotch-Brite also, but for now, we've got it, you know, better. So let's grab our caliper slide pin bolts. and I'll probably just put these in hand tight. And we're gonna do the same thing to the caliper itself. Now it's in a way better shape as far as not having junk on it. Really the one I'm dreading, guys, is, and I'm only gonna show you this side just because of lighting. I'm really dreading the one on the other side because that's the one where that CV boot broke. And obviously we're gonna have some cleaning to do as far as grease, because paint will not stick to grease. But this is in way better shape. You can see what I'm talking about as far as like having something to hold it. And I know you've probably seen YouTube videos out there where people are like painting their calipers with spray paint with the rotor on, and they just paint the rotor and all. That's just not how I do it here. Oh, there's a sticker back here. Get that off there. All right, same situation here. You know, once we actually go over it a couple times, get it all wiped down, and we should have ample time to dry, you know, before we actually start painting. You don't want to start painting, and I probably will. I know I'll probably use a red or a gray Scotch-Brite on these things just to make sure we don't have any issues. The other thing I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to go ahead and compress the pistons. That way I'm not compressing against a freshly painted caliper, even though, you know, it probably wouldn't hurt anything once it dried. Another one of those intricate details that I do just now. That way we don't have any issues. So I'll probably clean this again, take this back off, compress those, and I'll show you that process with the old pad. So I want to start off by warning you here. If this is going to be a multiple day operation, remember that you did this. And here's why. Guys, I'm using the old pad. I'm using a pair of old C-clamp. I know there's better tools out there. I've yet to buy one that I like as much as this method. All the cheaper ones I've done have broken. But anyway, what I was gonna tell you guys is that remember that you did this. And the reason I say that, guys, is if you set this thing down a couple days later, right? So we're obviously gonna have a day or two for paint to dry. Let's say that you set this thing down and you forgot that you push these guys back in. Well, you're not gonna have any brakes, and I mean none, when it comes to actually stopping this thing. So if there's anything behind it or anything in front of it, you will run it over. So be cautious and try to remember this right now, because I know that this is gonna be a couple day process for me because I'm painting and I've done this. I'm speaking from experience here. Back when we had the CTSV, luckily there was no cars. I had to circle almost the entire yard a couple times before I actually got brakes. So we're loosening and tightening until these pistons go all the way in. And like I said, I'm just doing this now because, in my opinion, guys, it sucks to have to try to hold a towel up there and not scratch up what you just painted. And this is why I like to keep the old brake pad around, because they work good as a compression device. If you try to do this one piston at a time, sometimes when you push on one, the other one pops out and so forth. All right, I think we're good. I'm gonna clean on this one a little more, and then we're gonna move to the back. Now I'm probably pickier than most, but in my opinion, guys, a red Scotch-Brite, we're just gonna go over it with it, you know, just giving it that paint an additional area to bite to. You don't have to spend hours doing this. You don't have to make them shiny. We're just doing a couple things here, getting more brake dust off, more grease off, and giving the paint an additional spot for adhesion. We'll spray it down again with brake clean, and then guys, I will probably wipe it down with some like mineral spirits or alcohol before we go on to paint, but we'll talk about that before we get into the paint. I just want to show you guys this step. You don't have to do this, but I generally do. Now for the back, a couple things are different. For one, your caliper guide bolts are a 13 millimeter. Holy cow, guys, that is, they're on there. Need a rubber mallet. And our center's spinning just like the other. All right, so I'm gonna go grab another wrench and we'll do this a different way, but 13 millimeter there, but I believe the caliper bracket itself is still an 18. The downside is there's not a gob of room there, so we may have to get creative. We may have to use the rubber mallet to get it loose, but first let's get this guy loose. Yeah, this one's gonna be a little bit different. 20 millimeter is what fits the inner, right? And then as far as this guy, of course it's wanting to spin. So we're gonna use the old mallet to get it loose. And then we're going to switch over. I don't like using my gear wrenches for that. It jacks them up. We'll switch over and get the gear wrench on it, get it loose, and we'll do the same thing for the bottom. Now for the back, like I said, guys, I don't have room to get my impact in here. I do not believe. I know I don't on the bottom. So for that, I've got my breaker bar and an 18, a short 18, and we're gonna use that to get these guys loose, because I just don't think that, golly. Yeah, that's gonna be a struggle also. There's not a lot of room here to work. And they put Loctite on these in the factory, so that makes things even harder. Let's see if we can. Oh my, yeah, we're gonna have to hit that with the other as well, I have a feeling. But let's get these off first, maybe that'll give us a little more room. So very similar situation to the front. We'll get this guy out, we'll set it up here for now. And then we'll get our old brake pads out. We'll use that to compress this guy. And these are not in the greatest of shape either. Holy cow, guys. We were due, that's for sure. All right, I'm gonna compress this one also. I'll do that off camera. But let's go ahead and get our hardware out. Like I said, let's keep it for now, just in case. For some reason, the new set doesn't come with it. But now we've got to work on getting those 18s. But I've got a little more room here. Maybe I can go get my other ratchet and use my mallet, kind of the mallet method, to pop it loose. So that same method works. They are snug though. You would think they'd get a little looser. Ah. Wow. All right, I want to run that one all the way out before I get the bottom one loose. This is where it's nice to have an extra couple ratchets that you don't necessarily care about, because this is definitely not good on the gearing. But these old Craftsmans that I've had forever, this bigger one anyway is held up. So we'll get the bracket off, and the rotor's a little bit different on this, guys. We're gonna have to cut these little holders on. I don't know if you guys can see on the rotor here. See these guys? I'm just gonna use a pair of side cutters, and we're just gonna pull those off. I'm not gonna reuse those. It doesn't have a Torx like the front to hold the bracket or hold the brake in place. I believe they did this in the factory just to make sure that the rotor didn't slip around before they got the wheels on, but they are not required. but your rotor is going to want to move around if you don't have them in place. So I'm going to go get the side cutters and we'll cut those real quick. Sometimes you may need a pick to get them started. I just literally beat the crap out of them trying to get them off. And sometimes you can break them. What I like to do is, if you can cut them, there we go. So we get both those off, then we can pull this rotor out of the way and have it loose. And then back to cleaning, guys. E-brake's got a little bit of wear on it, but not too bad. We'll clean that all up with brake clean. I'm gonna clean that backing plate off, make it look a little nicer. But then, guys, we're just gonna do the exact same thing. I'm gonna clean the caliper bracket and the caliper itself, and we're gonna kind of bolt it back up into place. Here we have it all reassembled. If you notice that, look, GM has the black caliper bracket back here in the back. So that'll be a little bit easier to cover than the, you know, whatever this is, just unfinished aluminum, I'm assuming. But either way, we've got both the front and the back taken apart, put back together, cleaned up, scuffed up. Guys, I'm going to do one more pass with some alcohol. I use the Scotch-Brite back on this one. This one's ready to go. But I'm gonna do one more pass with like rubbing alcohol just to make sure we don't have any grease or anything. Now I just have to go to the other side. I'm gonna knock that out off camera because it's the exact same process, obviously front and back. So I'm gonna go do it real quick. And then once I get that complete, guys, we're gonna grab some paint. I'm gonna kind of show you the process. I've kind of been thinking what I may end up doing is starting, you know, going all the way around all four. It's kind of like 4 hours, I think, between coats. But the only way I'm truly gonna be able to get some of the areas is I'm thinking I'm gonna take the caliper off, set it up top, like what we did earlier, paint the caliper bracket, go around, do all 4 caliper brackets, and then come back and even maybe paint the back side of the caliper, and then come back, put them together, and then put a second coat on once everything's dry. I'm worried right here, especially, you guys, I don't know if you can see that, but it's gonna be really tough for me to get paint in those areas and make that look nice if I don't do that. Now the front's a little bit different. I think we'll be able to coat it, but we'll just see. Let me go knock the other side out and we'll grab some paint. At this point, we went around the entire truck, SUV, whatever you want to call it. We've got all the brakes cleaned up, scuffed up, cleaned. I went over them again with some alcohol, some rubbing alcohol. And so we're ready to paint, guys. And so what I'm using is just some POR 15 caliper paint. Now, why am I using that? Well, I like the G2 stuff. But the downside to G2 is it has a hardener in it. So you have a working time of relatively quickly. So you can't just cap it off and go in the house if something happens. And so I don't love that part of it. Now, it works really well, don't get me wrong, but what I'm thinking I'm going to do here, and I've got the wrong size apparently, is I'm going to paint the bracket. I'm going to try to paint the back of the caliper, and then we're going to attempt to put it back together. So I'm gonna kind of hold the caliper, paint the back of it. I'm gonna try to set it down face up, if that makes sense, and we'll see what happens. So I'm probably gonna just time lapse one of these so you guys can kind of see, and then when we start back around, obviously when I'm painting the front, we'll time lapse again, but I'm gonna need to keep my bolts here handy. So yeah, that's the plan. Will it work? I don't know. I think so. It's worked before. I really like using the the truck to hold the calipers, man, it makes your life a lot easier. So what I'm thinking is we'll try to paint like, you know, this area, and then I'm gonna try to set it, you know, maybe like this or something. Try not to put a lot of stress. I don't know, I may be crazy. Either way, I think that's what I'm gonna try. Let's time lapse this. I'm just using the world's cheapest brush. Guys, either like $1 at my local Walmart, or I'll try to list some cheapies down below. I found that, you know, it doesn't take much. And this goes a long way. I've had this for a minute. As a matter of fact, this may have been what we used on my dad's truck when we had it in here, but you can see why, if you don't take the caliper off, you're not gonna be able to get these areas. And I think you're supposed to wait 4 hours between coats. We'll see. It doesn't like to stick to this GM metal. All right, let's get some music going and let's time lapse this thing. Went around the truck twice now. Put 2 coats on this and the back side of that. And so now you can see we've got it mounted. I've just got them loosely threaded in up here. So we can paint the front side. So I'll time lapse the front, you know, and it's not gonna take much here. As a matter of fact, I can probably paint it while I talk and not even time lapse it. It's just gonna be pretty quick. And we'll probably do, I'm assuming 3 coats. It's not sticking super great to this, which it generally doesn't. The first coat doesn't stick real well at all. You're just putting thin coats on. But it starts to get kind of tack up. And once it starts to tack up, you can put it on maybe a little thicker. Like I said, the first time I used this stuff, I wasn't in love with it. It streaked really bad with the brush strokes, but maybe I had an old batch of it. This stuff seems to do pretty well. And you know, I think you can get it multiple colors now. You can't get paint match colors like you can with G2, but you can get, I think, reds and blues now, and green. And you won't be able to see me paint the back. I've got majority of the back painted here, but we'll get the back painted and I'll show you guys the end result here. Let's take a look at what we're gonna be installing here. So we've obviously got new rotors, front and back. These are the front ones, the back ones. They're cross drilled and slotted. You guys know that what powerstop makes. I've used it, like I said, several times. But new pads, I went with the more towing related, I guess, truck style. It's like the Z36 option. But you can see we do have new hardware, which is good. And look, guys, I'm probably not going to be using the new boots. I don't think anyway. We'll just have to see how good the other ones are in as far as condition wise. But I do want to show you this. I let this set overnight. This is about 3 coats. You can see my creeper over there because I was rolling around to the bottom side. And guys, I think they look pretty good for what, you know, that paint's relatively cheap, and we didn't do a lot of time on cleanup. They look a lot better. So let's get our new stuff together and get this thing back on the road. You know, my wife had to actually drive my truck today, and she hates driving trucks. So yeah, we need to get this thing finished now. Let's see if we can get these things back apart. Hopefully they're not painted together. We need that 19mm. I ran these down somewhat snug, just mainly because they were moving around on me while I was painting, and I didn't necessarily like that. So, and guys, my boots, I'm noticing, are in great shape, so I am not going to be replacing them. I know that sounds crazy, but I also turned the wheel, as you can see. I had it kind of back and forth while I was painting, just to get a little better coverage on the back end. So we'll set this up here for now, you know, trying to keep it out of the way, and then we'll grab our 18 millimeters. That I'm probably gonna have to use something on. And there's actually an 18 already on here. I got those tighter than I thought. Holy cow, guys, these are snug. Okay, I'm gonna go grab my impact and knock those loose, I suppose. There we go. So we're gonna set this to the side, and we're gonna grab our new rotor. Now these are side specific and they are front and back specific. And they make it pretty dummy proof because they put on the rotor itself, front passenger side. Makes that pretty simple, right? So what we're gonna do is we need to align one of these guys. See how there's like an indentation, it's countersunk. We need to align that with that spot where that goes in to the front. For that Torx that holds this thing in place. All right. Yeah, aligned it. Okay, so it does have different ways to align. And then we're gonna grab our Torx. And guys, we are just gonna put this in very lightly. I don't even necessarily like to use the ratchet unless my hands are slippery. We may snug it just a hair. I think it's like 106 inch-pounds is what this goes to. I'm not even gonna do that. The next thing we wanna do is sometimes these rotors ship with a coating on them. We're gonna use a little bit of brake clean. We're gonna clean the face off, and then I'm gonna roll it around and clean the back off. So you got a little bit. Now that we've done that, let's take a look at these guys. So our slide pins, so these guys here, I like to pull them out if at all possible, and then put a little bit, I mean, these are in great shape. If they're rusty, guys, use some, maybe a piece of emery cloth. We're gonna put a little more caliper grease. That's what I've got here. Put it back into place. Like I said, these boots are in awesome shape. We're gonna do the same thing on the other side here. But if these are rusty, definitely take this time to clean them up. It might not hurt to shoot some cleaner in the socket itself, but you wanna make sure that these things are working like they're supposed to. So moving back and forth, sliding like that, definitely need that. Now we've got to torque these suckers down. I'm gonna put a little bit of blue Loctite on these. And we need to torque these to 170 foot-pounds. Is that not crazy? That seems like a lot to me. But that's what the manual calls for, so that's what we're gonna do. Get this back up into place. Get them started. And you guys saw how snug. I mean, there's still some thread lock left on it. The factory put some on there. Tell you what, it'd probably make more sense if we put the new hardware in before. Completely forgot about that, guys. Let me grab the hardware kit here. Let's put that in right here. Some of these kits come with like, I don't know if they're meant for like multiple vehicles, but There's several of these I've noticed. There's bigger ones and smaller ones. I think either one would fit this. I'm gonna grab the other ones and look at them because we kept those just in case. But these just snap into place. Yeah, these are the right ones. Another thing, guys, I like to do is let's put a little bit of this in here so our pads slide nicely like they're supposed to. Just like that. Now we're ready to put that on with the thread locker. You can see we've got them threaded in there, so now we got to try to put 170 foot-pounds of torque on that guy, which ought to be fun. You're gonna need a torque wrench that goes that high, of course. What's even crazier to me is the guide pins. So the guide pin bolts up here go to 74. That just seems crazy to me. But that's what the manual calls for. That's what we're gonna do. Let me get these torqued down and then we will grab our brake pads and put them in place. That wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it would be. So now we're gonna grab the pads, and if you guys remember when we first started this whole deal, that the pads are a little bit different from front to back. You have this indention right here, and the back one does not have that. So the back one has a flat edge on it, and the back one should have the wear indicator, if you remember. So we've got this one that's shaped, see how it's shaped? The back one is shaped differently and should, like I said, have the wear indicator on it. So see what I'm talking about? This guy right here, that one's the back, and you can see the wear indicator there. So we're gonna see if we can get these in. Sometimes they're a struggle. Oh man. That could be the easiest one of those that ever went in. Oh, perfect. Now also remember we compress that caliper, which for a couple reasons we need to remember that. One, we're not gonna have to do it now, but when we get in this thing, when we're completely finished, we need to make sure and pump up the brakes. But another thing I like to do is we are going to put some of this stuff. I used to put it on the pads, which didn't make a whole lot of sense. We're just gonna dab a little bit on the piston, and we're gonna put a little bit on the face up here to possibly keep this from rattling. Something I've always done. Now let's see if we can get it over the pads, and we can. And I generally, guys, don't put thread locker on these guys. I don't really think you need to. Boy, this bottom one is close. Now these get torqued to 74. Now you may have to use your 19 millimeter on the inner when you're going to torque these down. They may want to spin on you. They may not, since we've got a way thicker brake pad, but if they do, remember you're gonna have to get your 19 out, the wrench on the inside. But let's get these torqued down to 74, and this guy will be complete. Looks so much better. If it stops half as good, which I've never had any issue as it looks, we're good. So let's move on to the back. I'm probably gonna go ahead and do the other side. Like I said, I'm only showing you guys one side. I'm probably gonna do the other side real quick, and then we're gonna move on to the back and get the back reassembled. I skipped ahead a little bit, went ahead and took the bracket off and got the pad laying up there, but no different here, guys, in the back, and the fact that we have rear passenger side. We need to slide this guy on. Now it does not have that alignment piece like we had on the other, like on the front. We'll get this on here like that. And now we need to put this guy on, but before we do that, let's grab our hardware, put it in place, and then we need to pull out our slide pins and make sure that we have an ample amount of grease. I will tell you guys, I told you I was going to the other side and doing it. When I did the front on the other side, I probably should have cut in, but it needed some grease, and I replaced the boot on the driver's side front. There we go. These look really good, just like the fronts. And here's what we'll do. Let's get our hardware in place, if I can get this open. And it's pretty much the same exact principle. I need to wipe that caliper down. But when I say that, the torque specs are a little bit different and it's a little harder to get to. The 18 millimeters are really close back here, so I can't use a super deep impact, what I would call an impact socket. I have to use a smaller guy. Let's get these in here. All right. Same situation here. We're going to put a little bit in these areas where they slide. I don't think a lot of people do that. And then we're going to put some, in fact, let's just go ahead and do it. Put some anti-seize, or not anti-seize, but thread lock on the 18s, even though we have a little bit left. We'll get those started, and guys, these torque, they get pretty snug as well, but not like the front. These go to 148. I'll tell you what I should have done. I should have wiped that rotor off. I'll do that off camera here. Probably wouldn't hurt to use, like I've got an 18 millimeter ratcheting wrench to get these pretty snug. And then I'll grab my torque wrench and hammer it down to 148. Let me do that real quick and then we will get our pads in place. Now, unlike the front, these guys are a little bit different. Your basically wear indicator, that's gonna go in the back. Your one without a wear indicator is gonna go in the front, and you kinda gotta fish them in here. It's a little bit harder than the front was. You got that in. And guys, whatever you do, make sure you put them in the right way. I've done that before. Put them in wrong. Like with the actual pad portion. Yeah. So aside from that, let's get a little bit of caliper grease on this, on the front here. And you notice I didn't paint the insides. When you get a powder coated set, they do not paint the inside where the brake actually moves around, the pad slides, probably because it doesn't do a bit of good. A little harder to get these in. Got my glove stuck. There we go, we got it. There. So, 38 foot-pounds on these guys. So not very much. I'm going to use, there's not a lot of room here either. The brake line's in the way, up top here. You'll need a 20 millimeter if this starts to spin, like the other ones did. So you'll need that. Aside from that though, that's really it. 38 millimeter, I'm gonna have to use a different, what I was gonna say is I'm gonna use a crow's foot so I can get to it from back here and not have to worry about trying to get a ratchet in there. Once we get this torque down, we'll step back and take a look at them. But guys, we are ready to go do the break-in period. I've got to do the other side real quick, but let's get this torqued. We'll step back, take a look, and we'll go try to do some break-in. Now we're reassembled on both sides, and guys, I have to say, it looks so much better. It's not gonna get that rusty, nasty look like they always do, like the factory brakes always do. Not to mention all the older versions of the powerstop, any version for that matter that I've ever had, has very little brake dust. And if it does have brake dust, it's relatively clear. They're quiet. I'm a big fan, guys, and they're relatively affordable. You know, they're not a Willwood, they're not a Bear brake, but ultimately I like the look. So at this point, we're all finished up. So a couple things we need to remember. First of all, we obviously got to put the wheels back on. I did take this time to clean the barrels off of the wheels. So you can see I took some scrubbing compound and got those all cleaned up. So we're going to put those back on. Those need to be torqued to 140 foot-pounds. So we're going to do that. And then we need to do the break-in period. So let's take a look here at the break-in period. I'm not going to take you guys along with me because it's kind of a pain in the area I live, but 5 aggressive decelerations from 40 to 10. So you're not going to completely stop. Immediately following that, you're going to do 5 moderate, so kind of less. You can see the little gauge right there. From 35 to 5, and then you need to drive it for 5 minutes without touching the brakes at all. So, I mean, I live somewhat close to the country, so it makes it a little easier going out the route that I go to do this. I take the same route every time, but let's get the wheels on. Oh, one other thing, big important thing. When we get in this thing for the first time, we need to pump up the brakes so we actually have a pad touching. Do not forget to do that. This has been over the course of a couple days, so sometimes it's really easy to forget that, especially when you're painting and waiting for paint to dry. So do not forget to pump up your brakes before you put it in gear, guys. But let's go get this thing done, and I'll let you guys know how it goes. We are back after the drive, and guys, no issues whatsoever. I didn't think there would be, but look, we have a good swipe pattern on all 4. You know, and what I mean by that is you can tell that the pad was riding nice and evenly all the way around. I did not have any pulling one way or the other. I didn't have any noises. Now look, when you're getting on your brakes hard like that, you're gonna smell them. Definitely gonna smell them. But I roll with the windows down so I can listen for any, you know, crazy noises or anything like that. No issues. I love it. Like I said, guys, I'm a big fan of these brakes. It definitely looks a lot better. You can't see a lot of that caliper behind this wheel because the spokes are so thick, but you know, when it sets a certain way, and especially out in the daylight, even though it's absolutely filthy right now, the wheels are at least clean though, and the calipers, but the rest of it needs a good wash down. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Guys, I would recommend this for anybody. I'm one of those people that if I don't trust a product, guys, I won't recommend it to you. I've made videos in the past and then ditched them, or came back and told you. As a matter of fact, on this thing, when I did the LED conversion from the HID, I posted that video, but then they burned out like, I don't even think it was 6 months. And so I posted a video talking about the new ones that I got. So, you know, I'm not one of those guys that's going to tell you to go buy something if it doesn't work. Now, longevity wise, if something happens, like I know a lot of people are afraid of the cross drill because they crack. Guys, I've had these on my 52 back there for about, well, probably 8 years, and I've not had any issues. Now, I don't daily drive it. You know, this is going to get a little more wear and tear than, you know, what some of the other stuff in here gets, but I've never had any issues, with hard braking or whatnot. But if you guys did enjoy this video, please, like always, go down there and smash that thumbs up button. Guys, if you are not subscribed, you got to get subscribed. Of course, while you're down there doing all that, check out twamotorsports.com. Use the little bell icon, to hit and notify you every time we drop a new video, and stay tuned to see what we work on next.